Peace, peace, peace. What it is, it's your brother Trayvon Swain, L, aka the Orthodox Moor. And real quick, fam, I just want to address something that kind of just caught me off guard, and I'm a little dumbfounded by this. So I'm a big fan of Speaker's Corner, and HydePark, and the conversations that go on up there. And I'm a big fan of the type of conversations Brother Garvey has in particular up at the park with in particular the Muslims up there. I'm a Muslim of Maghreb Jewish descent, and I'm a Quranist, and so I find myself also debating Muslims quite often. And Brother Garvey and I, although we take opposite ends of the perspective and the spectrum of belief, in a sense, and I'll get into that in a minute, even though we take opposite perspectives in how we argue, we're typically arguing against the same concepts and inconsistencies that a lot of Muslims bring to the table via arguments they make from the hadith. So recently, the brother had a debate with an Ahmadiyya Muslim brother named Imam Bashir, and when you see the debate, I mean, the brother just ragdolled Imam Bashir based upon inconsistencies in his argument and what was found in the hadith. This is not hard to do to a lot of Muslims. And a lot of times I'll comment on Sarah's videos and just applaud him for what he's doing, because I personally, like, so in the Quran of Mecca, it stipulates that if you don't know what you're talking about, or don't speak on what you don't know, basically. And bring your proofs if you are truthful, right? So there's a lot of Dawah cats out there in Speaker's Corner that are talking above their pay grade, and they speak on a lot of things they don't know, and they get caught up. And a lot of times they're not humble, and they just keep pressing forward, and they get more caught up, and they get shown to be prideful and whatnot. And a lot of times they can't swallow their pride, and there's a lot of issues. And for people like Brother Garvey comes real hard at cats in terms of, like, he doesn't mince words. He just jumps right at the inconsistency and the logic. And I dig that personally, because again, in Islam, you're not supposed to speak on things you don't know. So if you don't want to engage in that conversation, you shouldn't even be trying to have it, particularly in a place like Speaker's Corner. Yeah. And so for instance, like Brother Garvey and a whole bunch of other Kemetic brothers, right, up at the park, they get into it with the Muslims over the concept of did Allah create from nothing, right? Now, as a Quranist, I have the same beef, right? Because in the Quran, it specifies that Allah created from water, and then smoke / vapor / gas, right? So it never says that he created from nothing, right? But yet that's the argument that a lot of people like to make, right? So when people like Sarah or Gabs or even myself can prove that Allah didn't create from nothing, and it doesn't make sense to try to uphold that, people get very, very offended. And with people like Sarah, they don't let up on it, right? If you're illogical, he doesn't let up on it until you admit that you're being illogical, right? And so for him, it got so extreme to where his life was threatened, and he had to take some time away from the park. So understanding all that, I can understand something else about him. When he speaks on the Abrahamic traditions, he seems to have a very negative vibe towards them, and seems to argue that they are intrinsically dangerous to people of African descent, and that a lot of him and a lot of people that believe very similar to him would make the argument, or seem to make the argument, that the Abrahamic traditions borrowed from the Kemetic traditions. Therefore, people in the diaspora should just forego the Abrahamic traditions and just go straight to the Kemetic traditions, or African spiritual systems if you want one. And I can completely understand that. However, when I was listening to this build that you had, that Brother Sarai had with the Bob the Builder up on the Speaker's Corner, and you can check that out on Content Over Everything. It's this video up right here. Please, man, go subscribe to Content Over Everything. My man is doing his thing, giving you the real coverage up at Speaker's Corner, for real. Go check him out and subscribe, for real. Shout out to that brother. Salute. But when I was watching this, like, Bob the Builder made some very interesting points about Coptic and Ethiopian Christianity. And Sarai just kept sidestepping. He was like, no. But the prevailing concept is this white Jesus concept, And even when it's so far as to say, it's like when Bob said something like, we're made in God's image or whatnot, Sarai said something to the effect of, oh, well, that's just your belief. Now, when he says belief, in the circle that he runs in with like Kalam and Gabs, and all them type of cats, when they talk about belief, they're specifically, they speak on the fact that they don't deal with belief, right? They deal about what they can prove, right? So when he's saying that's just your belief, he's basically saying that you can't prove that you're made in God's image. And so the moment he said that, I was like, okay, this is not seeming like it's adding up. So I'm listening to the brother, you know what I'm saying, for many, many months. And in this past debate, right? And the brother breaks down the concept of being like a pantheist, right? To where basically his concept is like, he doesn't believe in an anthropomorphic God. Check. Don't disagree with that, right? He believes that God is energy. He believes everything is energy, and energy is everything. And that he believes in like a oneness, an interconnectedness between all things. Right? Even so much to the point that he believes that he can speak to his ancestors, to which I don't disagree in any way, shape, or form. But then goes on to say that or would seem to insinuate that he doesn't believe that a Christian can say that they believe they're made in God's image and have that be logical. Right? Now, there's a couple of things I got an issue with this, because on the one hand, if you're saying everything is energy and energy is everything, how is that any different than saying that we're made in the image of God? How is that any different? That doesn't make sense to me. Now, I can see where people try to make the claim to where in modern Christianity, God is something outside of yourself. But this is where I have my issue, Brother Sarah. So when Bob the Builder was coming at you saying, but what about the Coptic Christians? What about the Ethiopian Christians? You yourself pointed out the fact that they had a different concept and understanding than modern Christianity, right? And so, as someone who claims to be a Pan-Africanist, I'm a Pan-Africanist myself, right? I'm an African descent Muslim, African descent Israelite, / Jew, and I'm very heavy into the concept of Pan-Africanism, and strong into the concept of being Pan-African without having to denigrate any other population on the planet, right? Like you say, for the forward progress of our people, right? Without the denigration of any other people, right? Someone, as someone who's So I've heard you describe yourself as the Abrahamic equalizer, right? Well, I would consider myself an Abrahamic omnitheist, right? One, I'm a naturalist. I don't believe the concept of God or what anybody would call God in the Abrahamic traditions. I don't believe God acts outside of God's own natural laws that God designs. I don't. So the concept of being a naturalist is you don't believe in the supernatural. I don't believe in supernatural. Right? I believe God is natural. Whatever God is natural. God does not go outside of God's own rules. And that's stipulated within the Abrahamic traditions themselves, in the scriptures themselves. You can't see God breaking God's own rules anywhere. On top of being a naturalist, I'm an omnitheist, right? As a Moslem, the Quran of Mecca stipulates that every nation was given a prophet. So for me, every nation, every religious tradition has some portion of the truth to it. Period. Some aspect of the oneness, right? I'm also a pantheist, right? I have absolutely no issue dealing with the interconnectedness aspect, right? We're dealing with the concept of the fact that whatever you want to call God or the ultimate reality is the grand sum total and oneness of whatever is essentially real. I have absolutely no issue stating that. I believe that 100%. But see, here's my issue, Brother Sarai, is every Abrahamic tradition out there would say the same thing. None of them would disagree with your concept of pantheism whatsoever. And you know, in particular, and you're talking about it, that the African versions of these Abrahamic traditions wouldn't disagree with you either. So at that juncture, you got me curious, right? Because as a Pan-Africanist, we can study the facts and go into history, right? Like, so for me, I'm a Moorish American Muslim, right? In my tradition, Marcus Garvey and Noble Drew Ali are our two pillars, right? Marcus Garvey being the harbinger, Noble Drew Ali being the prophet, right? So in studying Marcus Garvey, right, the most successful Pan-Africanist that we can point to in the diaspora today, right? The UNIA having millions upon millions of members, right? Somewhere between like 6 and 10 million, et cetera, right? At its height, right? He was somebody who was Catholic, I believe, right? Or Methodist or whatever, some form of Christian, right? But at some point in his life, he changed his concept of it, and it became an Afrocentric Pan-Africanist form of an Abrahamic tradition. He said that he had the God, he believed in the God of Jacob. He was co-signing on Muhammad. He was talking about Jesus being the greatest reformer out there. You know what I'm saying? And he said that he believed in the God of Ethiopia, right? And the motto of his organization was one God, one aim, one destiny, right? And he said that one God was the God of Ethiopia. So he was able to see the value in taking these same traditions that you recognize originate in an African sense, and turning people back to an African perspective with these traditions, right? So in a sense, taking a Ma'afa mindset, right? People who went through the Ma'afa, went through the tragedy, right, were handed a colonialist version of their own religion, right? And then he used their religions for a Sankofa solution, in the sense to where he went back and grabbed what was useful. He went back and grabbed a concept to where people are using these religions to see the God within themselves, and not to brainwash themselves with the colonialistic mindset to where they're seeing themselves as less than in comparison to someone else. For instance, like what you're talking about with the with the Jedi mind trick of having a white Jesus, so called, right? You can see Marcus Garvey was very big on the concept of either as African descent people either having a God that looked like us or understanding our God didn't look like anybody, but that we were still reflections of that God. But so you say something different than the most successful Pan-Africanists that we know in history, right? That the modern diaspora should basically just reject these Abrahamic traditions straight away, boom, and go straight back towards like an African tradition on stuff, right? If anything. And one, I'm trying to wonder, like, so why throw the baby out with the bathwater in the sense that, like, we know that was successful and we can see the benefit of what was done with it. Right? Millions upon millions upon millions of people working together, right? We had Jews, we had Christians, we had Muslims working together. We had Muslims that rocked the fez, we had Ahmadiyya Muslims, all that. Different Muslims, okay? Different, all working together, right? Under the concept of one God, one aim, one destiny, right? And again, examine that. So from a pantheist concept, right? What's unpantheistic about one God, one aim, one destiny? Those concepts seem to correlate very, very, very well. They seem to be very succinct. They seem to manifest the same principles and concepts. Like the concept of Ubuntu, or like I am because we are, right? Same concepts. There's nothing different about the concept of I am because we are, and one God, one aim, one destiny. So I hear you saying like I don't believe in God, or I don't believe in an anthropomorphic God, right? So who's saying that the Abrahamic God is anthropomorphic? Like, again, you're saying with your own mouth that you recognize that there's a split in traditions, that there's the African origin to these things, right? Like, we're talking about the Coptic and the Ethiopian Christianity versus Catholicism, right? Or modern Catholicism, or modern Protestantism, or modern evangelicalism, or modern Christianity, period. The modern white Jesus, like you said, right? You recognize that there's the split. So why pretend that going back to the African origin is still a negative thing? We know that history says it's not a negative thing for us to do. History says that it actually can help us galvanize the people in the Pan-African direction. So are you sincere in your Pan-Africanism, brother? Are you sincere? And if you are sincere, because I don't think you're not, if you are sincere, do you not see the danger in trying to stipulate that the Abraham traditions are no good for our people, period? Particularly when you know that history says otherwise. If they're used in a Pan-African way. So I'm not gonna beat this up too much. Brother Sarah, you are a highly intelligent brother. Highly intelligent brother. And I personally believe you are a sincere Pan-Africanist, right? Being that I believe that, right? I'm gonna invite you to a solution that I've been trying to get done with Brother Prospect, with Brother Jedi, and Brother Kalam, right? I'm on Prospect's channel talking about this. I'm on Titans TV talking about this. And Brother Kalam let me on Titans TV just specifically to try to make this pop off, right? Unfortunately, the stuff with Tommy Robinson popped off, and it kind of divided things up. But here we go, right? Before Tommy Robinson came down to the park, I was trying to get something going on with the G Circle to where a portion of the G Circle was used to speak on religions, period, from a Pan-African perspective, right? With the concept of, so not having debates, but with the concept of, so Malcolm X, and I'm a very firm believer in this concept of, stipulated like in order for us to have some kind of success in being a Pan-Africanist movement and whatnot, he was in his mind, he thought that we need to leave our religion at the door. And I can understand that, because when you do that, that leaves a level of arguing and infighting at the door that you're not going to bring into some closed room conversation, right? However, when you leave the conversation and you pick your religion back up at the door, right? If there's not a concerted effort to make sure that you're not practicing that religion with the colonialistic mindset, it's only inevitable that you're going to be divided over those concepts at some point in time, right? So, like, I pitched the concept to Ross Spector and Jedi, to which they were favorable to, just not. They didn't want to do it right then and there. They wanted to wait on it. Was the concept of, again, using some portion of the G Circle, right? To, not the whole thing, but some portion of it, to focus on the concept of speaking about whatever religions are being practiced from a Pan-African point of view, right? Even if it's an atheist, agnostic / pantheistic view, right? Speaking about the fact that, like, for instance, like the atheistic point of view, right? You can see where the line is drawn between the atheistic concept and certain logistic traditions that come out of Kemet, right? So even drawing those lines, right? So we can here's what I'm basically saying, right? So we can see that Marcus Garvey's model worked, right? However, as someone who's a devout Muslim, right, and devout in my Abrahamic tradition, right, like, I also recognize the fact that there's people like you who are not Abrahamic in your tradition, right, but you're sincere Pan-Africanist, right, and you fall somewhere in between the spectrum of being an atheist and an agnostic pantheist, right, and as my brother, right? Like, and here's what you need to understand, like in Islam, and particularly when you really get into the Quran, fam, or the Bible, or what have you, right? I'm not supposed to beef with you on having a different belief, right? Not the issue. I'm not even supposed to worry about that, right? All of those traditions say, take care of your kindred, take care of your family, take care of your nation, take care of your tribe. So I don't have to agree with you in order for me to want to help you as a brother in my nation. Yeah, that's a completely different thing to being a brother in the faith. Completely different thing. So I'm saying we see the model work with Marcus Garvey and what he did. There obviously needs to be a pillar built in this for people like you and otherwise, right, who don't want to subscribe or have anything to do with the Abrahamic traditions, right, but want to be Pan-African nonetheless, right? So I'm saying you're skilled enough to build with that, right? Like, you're skilled enough to go do something with that, right? You could go to the G Circle right now. People ain't gonna flip on you like they did Kalam, right? You went and sat down with Tommy Robinson too, right? Like, sat down with them, right? They're not gonna flip on you the same, fam. Why? Because you go out and you engage people a little bit different than what Kalam does, right? So here's what I'm saying, fam. Why don't you go out there, yeah, and have them do a portion of the G Circle where they do that, right? Because that type of energy, that type of move, that's building something that unifies, right? Like, so you're talking about the fact that you believe in interconnectedness, right? having all of our people believe in some level of oneness is how we're going to get interconnected, right? If our people see that oneness through an Abrahamic tradition or some non-Abrahamic tradition, right? Why take that from them? If you take that from them, they're never going to be able to be one with anybody else, right? But if they got that concept of oneness, and they can use that concept of oneness to be Pan-African with it, fam, right as rain. Right as rain, yeah? But if you're not doing that, right, what do you think you're really doing? You're making moves of division, right? Like when you're at the park and you're arguing against, like you rarely ever argue against a Muslim of African descent, yeah? Very rare. Very, very, very rare, right? So a lot of times when you argue with Muslims, they're typically of some kind of Asian descent, yeah? Like when I see you go at them like that, or to go at them the way you do, at first it seems like it's just you're going to the logistics thing, right? And I'm with that, right? And I hear you say you're Pan-African, right? So I'm like, all right, cool. When you get amongst some African Muslims, I think you're probably going to change your tactics a little bit to, like, you know what I'm saying, bring people back to some kind of concept of making sure, hey, make sure your Islam is on some Pan-African stuff. Kind of like how Rap Raven talks, right? When Rap Raven goes out there and speaks to people, he's like, hey, no matter what group you're in, man, get together and make it happen. But when I see you having a debate with another African descent brother in the diaspora, right? Whether who brought up the topics or not, right? When I see you having that debate, I'm like, that doesn't really seem Pan-African to me, yeah? Like, because I don't see the move for unity anywhere in that. When I watched the debate, I watched it a couple of times, fam. All I saw was division throughout the whole thing. I didn't at the end of it, I didn't see a move for unity. I didn't see any inspiration for unity. I saw inspiration for people being divided. So them same tactics, they got people so irritated to the point to where they threatened your life, yeah? Is it Pan-African to use those tactics within our community? Is that sincerely being Pan-African? I would say no. And I think anybody within the sound of my voice is going to say no, yeah? So I'm sincerely inviting you, brother, man. Like, sincerely inviting you, yeah? Sit down with Kalam. Sit down with whoever, right? Hash some stuff out, you know what I'm saying? And rethink how you're going about this whole thing, man. Because you are an extremely intelligent brother. Like you have the ability to be like our Christopher Hitchens, right? In a certain sense, right? And I'm down with that, right? I got no issue with that, yeah. Like, again, in Islam, I'm saying people shouldn't talk about what they don't know about, yeah? Like, there's nothing that you say that bothers me whatsoever, right? Because I know my tradition, yeah? So if we were to ever get into a conversation, right, like, there's nothing that you're saying that's going to make me, like, get all crazy emotional, you know what I'm saying? We're going to have a good intellectual conversation, right? Because I'm not going to speak about anything I don't know about. I'll let you, hey, you know, I don't know about that. And if I do know about it, I'm going to let you know what I know. And I'm specifically not going to try to be in public with you disagreeing to a crazy extent just on some Pan-African stuff, right? Like, so I just challenged Imam Bashir to a debate, right? Brother, you just debated because he came at the Moors in your debate in a crazy sideways manner, right? But in my challenge to him, you know what I'm saying? I'm still not trying to come at him in a crazy way, right? I'm just trying to correct. I'm trying to come at stuff in a very respectful way, yeah? Because in a public situation, right, we shouldn't ever be talking about why we need to be divided. We should only be talking about why and how we should be unified. So again, I'll leave it at this, but if you're sincere about being a Pan-Africanist, I totally believe you are. I do not know. I believe you are, and I'm being sincere when I say that. Please rethink your tactics, because using the tactics within our community that you use at Speaker's Corner is not going to be productive in any way, shape, or form. In any way, shape, or form. And when you stick to, and when you stick to this default mindset of anything Abrahamic is negative, and then also have the same ability to say that you recognize that there's a difference between how it's practiced in the African concepts versus the modern concepts, or more widespread concepts, it makes you sound as illogical as the people you call God book followers. I'll say that one more time. It makes you sound as illogical as the people you call God book followers, and you're smarter than that. Yeah. So again, that's why I'm saying, please rethink your whole strategy on this joint. Yeah. And with that, brother man, I sincerely say peace and love.